Hello and welcome. We begin with the latest developments from South Africa. US President Donald Trump has triggered a new trade war, imposing reciprocal tariffs on dozens of countries across the world on Wednesday. South Africa is among the hardest hit, with the Trump administration slapping a 30% tariff on imports from Pretoria. Trump said that his reciprocal tariffs were for countries that treated the US badly. He also imposed a baseline 10% tariff on all imports coming into the US. The US president claimed that the tariff rates were calculated based on each country's existing duties on American goods, imposing half of what those nations charged the US in return. For South Africa, whose second largest trading partner is Washington, Trump stated that the 30% reciprocal tax was imposed because Pretoria levies a 60% tariff on US exports. Trump escalated his criticism, claiming, quote-unquote, bad things were happening in South Africa.
They made a fortune with the United States of America. United Kingdom, 10%, and we'll go 10%. So we'll do the same thing. South Africa, 60%, 30%, and they've got some bad things going on in South Africa. You know, we're paying them billions of dollars, and we cut the funding because a lot of bad things are happening in South Africa. The fake news ought to be looking at it. They don't want to report it.
Now, this comes amid worsening relations between Pretoria and Washington in Trump's second term over South Africa's controversial Land Expropriation Act, which Trump claims is anti-white. The new US government has also torn into various other foreign policies of Pretoria, which finally culminated in the expulsion of South Africa's ambassador last month. Washington has also cut off crucial aid to Pretoria. President Cyril Ramaphosa even sent a delegation to Washington this week to clarify Trump's so-called misconceptions. Yet there are few signs of ties improving, and with 30% tariffs coming in, things are likely to get further complicated. Now, responding to the imposition of tariffs, Ramaphosa said on Thursday that the unilateral imposed and punitive tariffs are a concern. He noted that tariffs serve as a barrier to trade and shared prosperity. South Africa further said it remained committed to a mutually beneficial trade relationship with the United States and will look to negotiate a new bilateral and mutually beneficial trade agreement with Washington. South Africa's trade minister, however, criticized Trump's move, questioning how the US calculated the 60% tariffs imposed by South Africa on American exports. He added that South Africa was actively seeking new markets and opportunities.
Partnerships for mutual benefit are certainly under threat from unilateral tariff measures. Therefore, South Africa will not be left wanting in this trade tussle. We are actively working towards new opportunities and new markets for our goods and services, and working with partners to see the value of mutually beneficial partnerships.
Now, economists have also warned that tariffs could destabilize South Africa's economy, potentially reducing its economic growth by up to 0.3 percentage points. Now, of particular concern is Washington's imposition of a universal 25% tariff on all automobile imports. Automobile exports account for 64% of Pretoria's exports under the U.S. African Growth and Opportunity Act, which provides duty-free access to the U.S. market for most of South African products. The exports are reportedly estimated at more than $2 billion. But South Africa is not alone in bearing Trump's tariff brunt in Africa. Now, some of the other African countries hit with reciprocal tariffs include 50% for Lesotho, 47% for Madagascar, 40% for Mauritius, 37% for Botswana, 32% for Angola, and 14% for Nigeria. Kenya, Ghana, Ethiopia, Tanzania, Uganda, Senegal, and Liberia, Egypt, and Morocco were among those countries which will have to pay the baseline tariff of 10%. Now, the US is expected to start charging the 10% tariffs on imports from the 5th of April, with the higher duties for certain nations starting on the 9th of April. As these reciprocal duties take effect, one question looms. Can South Africa and other affected nations negotiate a way forward? Or is this just the start of a prolonged trade war? To discuss more on this, we have with us Kani Magubane, a political analyst who is joining us live from Johannesburg, South Africa. Thank you for being with us, Kani.
A very good afternoon to you and your viewers.
Now, let's jump right in. What are the possible political and economic motivations behind Trump's claim that bad things are going on in South Africa? And how might this rhetoric be influencing US trade policy?
Well, we know that as early as last year, when Donald Trump was still on the election trail, we had a South African political party called AfriForum, which is a mostly white Afrikaner right-wing party, go to the United States and in Washington to talk to Donald Trump and his team there, to tell them that there was a genocide on white people, particularly the white farming communities. And this created the impression that South Africa is undergoing a systematic eradication of white people, particularly those in the rural areas in the farming community. Now, this has been dispelled, of course, by a number of facts. If we just look at what is motivating some of those farm attacks, it has been found that it is criminal. South Africa has very high levels of crime. And so those assertions that there's a genocide against white people, has been seen to be untrue. It's false. It's not factually correct. However, the Donald Trump administration is running with this rhetoric because in many ways it's part and parcel of the global right-wing movement of conservatives. The minute the conservatives took power in America, it emboldened the conservatives in South Africa, and suddenly they felt like they had a big brother in America that they could go and cry to about the conditions of white people, quote unquote, in South Africa. So those bad things that Donald Trump is referring to is actually non-existent bad things, because it's not only white people, unfortunately, in South Africa who are experiencing crime. It's everybody equally. However, the impression that's been created right now is that there is a category of crime, or there is a category of genocide that is reserved for white people, and nothing could be further from the truth. And of course, the Trump administration knows this. The Trump administration, in fact, America has top intelligence. They've got the CIA, they've got the FBI, they've got their agents and operatives in every country. They know for a fact that this is not true. So the question is, why are they running with this narrative?
Right. And how will the imposition of a 30% tariff impact South African industries that have, of course, relied heavily on the duty-free access under AGOA? And could this lead to broader regional economic consequences?
Well, I think in the short term, there definitely will be a number of harsh effects because of these tariffs. I mean, at 30%, what this will mean, of course, is that American products are going to be more expensive to be brought into the country, but also it affects our import and export numbers because, we are a very big trade partner with the United States, and South Africa and the United States have always had a very cordial and I would say a warm relationship over the years, and that is part and parcel of what has made America great in the past, has been the relationships that it's had with its trade partners, with its diplomatic partners, in the form of the many countries around the world. But right now, 50 of those countries that Donald Trump listed today are in Africa. So the question is the Trump administration anti-Africa? Is it anti-development of Africa? Is it anti the forward movement of Africa? And this will then, in the long term, force us to look at diversification of trade partners. As much as America says that South Africa is friends with his enemies like India and Russia and Iran. But the truth is, South Africa is also part of BRICS. And it wasn't too long ago that America made a very direct threat to BRICS to say if they move away from using the dollar and they start to adopt the BRICS currency, that there would be consequences. However, the moves that he's making is pushing us towards that. It's pushing the world's countries towards, a different economic bloc that no longer relies on America and the dollar. And of course, America wants to remain at the center of geopolitics and the global world trade movement. But the way that the Trump administration is moving, they are in essence, removing themselves from the center, and they're pushing themselves towards, the periphery of global trade. And they are unfortunately going to feel the effects of the moves that they're making now, when countries that they thought would not survive, without them, are suddenly making it in areas where they previously needed American funding.
Right. Connie, thank you very much for being with us on Firstpost Africa. Great to speak with you, as always.
Thank you.
Greeting you with aloha and namaste.
I love India.
Presence, occupation of a territory by another country pertains to India, what we saw in Kashmir.
The Prime Minister Modi.
How do you see Trump's America?
Yes, the current administration behaves differently from the previous administration.
Are you saying that there are foreign powers who are trying to bring down the current government in Syria?
Exactly.
Bluntly, Iran, maybe Russia too.
Prime Minister Modi committed to South-South, cooperation.
Not over 50%.
Is Ukraine prepared to pay the price for that peace?
No compromises at the cost of territorial integrity and sovereignty.